we finished talking about the song of the day and the two additional psalms that are added after the song of the day. And at this point in davening, we're at the Mourner's Kaddish. So I want to just talk about Kaddish today for a little bit. So there are 7 Kaddishes that are embedded in the service throughout the day, in the morning, afternoon, and evening service. The 7 are based or allude to the verse Sheva Vayom Hilalticha, which is translated as I praise your name 7 times a day, 7 times daily. And so the Kaddish, which is an aggrandizement of God's name, a praising of God's name, an enlarging of God's name, so the praise of God's name, and when the one who says Kaddish calls out the Imru Amen, everybody say Amen, and then they say Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, that God's name should be great and blessed, and so on. So this is done at least 7 times a day. But those 7 times, and another opinion that it should be 10 times, and different ways of calculating exactly the 7 or exactly the 10. But those only really include the Kaddishes that are said by the Chazan during davening. But then there are also the Mourner's Kaddish. There's the Mourner's Kaddish and the Rabbanan Kaddish. Now, altogether, different communities have different customs. The way it turns out in the Chabad community, the Chabad custom, we end up saying 17 Kaddishes a day. 17. So an additional 10. And that's because there's the Mourner's Kaddish in the davening, there's the Kaddish Rabbanans, there's the Kaddish after Tehillim, after the daily recital of Tehillim, there's the Kaddish after Mishnayos, which we add after davening as well, 3 times a day. So altogether, it comes out to 17. And on a day like Monday or Thursday, when there's Torah reading and we have an additional Kaddish at the end of the Torah reading, we actually end up with 18 times on those days that we recite Kaddish. Now, the Kaddish also serves as sort of a break as well as a bridge. So it breaks up the different sections of the davening. So for instance, in the morning after Psukei de Zimra, the section of verses of praise, which ends with Yishtabach, we want to break between that section, Psukei de Zimra, and the next section, which is the blessings of the Shema. So we insert a Kaddish and a Baruch Hu there. We don't do one between the blessings of the Shema and the Amidah because as we've discussed in the past, we don't want to make any interruption there. So there is no interruption there. But it serves throughout the davening. You'll see that it's positioned in those places, both the Kaddish said by the Chazan as well as the Kaddish even said by Mourner. So for instance, Mourner's Kaddish now also is a break between the song of the day and what comes afterwards. But I said it's not just a break, it's actually also a bridge. The Arizal teaches that the different sections of davening, different things happen, and the worlds, the supernal worlds, the spiritual worlds, are elevated at different parts of davening. Different worlds are elevated to different places during different parts of the davening. So the Kaddish is like the elevator that elevates those worlds. So when we get from when we finish the song of the day, before we go to Kavi Enkel Ekenu, the world of Asiya is elevated into the world of Yitzira. So there's a Kaddish there that elevates it. Okay, so that's a little bit about Kaddish. The Mourner's Kaddish, and we've been together already long enough, guys, on Zoom. So we'll tell you what it says in the Sfarim. It says in the good books, in the Medrash, and this is brought also in the Zohar. There are slight variations in a few places, but the story is essentially the same, which is that Rabbi Akiva would go out into the desert to review his studies by himself, and he was out in the wilderness. And he sees a person who looked like a charcoal, looked burnt like a charcoal. And he is carrying a big bundle of wood on his shoulders, and he's running back and forth very quickly. He's running swift like a horse. So Rabbi Akiva stops him, and he says, "What's your situation? Tell me your story." This was an unusual sight. So the guy said, "I'm dead. And I can't find any rest. So the angels of death, every day, they make me gather wood, and then they take me and burn me in the wood pile that I gathered for them. And there's no respite for my soul. I can't find any rest." And the reason for this harsh punishment is because he violated every last sin in the Torah. He says, you name it, he did it. Which, by the way, also takes talent. To be able to, every sin that's something special. But at any rate, so Rabbi Akiva says to him, did you hear any chatter among the guards as to what might possibly be a way for rectification for you to get out of this? So he said, I heard them say that if only this guy had a son who would say Kaddish and Baruch Hu, and cause people to say Amen and to say Baruch Hashem HaMavarech Le'Levad, then this would be the end of it for him. That would be over. So Rabbi Akiva asked him if he has a child. He says, yeah, he has a son. He says, where are you from? Where does your son live? Anyway, Rabbi Akiva traveled to this location. He did some investigating. He found this boy. It is a boy who was not even circumcised, and let alone know anything about Judaism. Rabbi Akiva sat him down and started to teach him Torah, and nothing was going into the boy's head. So it says Rabbi Akiva fasted for 40 days so that this boy should be able to absorb some Torah. After 40 days, he heard from a heavenly voice saying that his prayers were answered, and he sat with the boy and he taught him Torah, and he taught him the Shema, and he taught him how to recite the blessing after meals, and he taught him how to say Kaddish. And the boy got up and said Kaddish. Rabbi Akiva took him, put him in the synagogue. He said Kaddish, and the next day, Rabbi Akiva was visited in a dream by this spirit that he had seen a while before, who said that my son said Kaddish, and they released me from all these issues, and I wanted to bless you, that you should be comforted in the world to come the way you've comforted me. That's the gist of the story. There are slight variations of the story. There's a story that Rabbi Akiva, that eventually this boy became a big scholar as well, and Rabbi Akiva actually gave him rabbinic ordination, and that his name was Nachum Hapakuli, they called him. This was what the boy's name, Harav, a rabbi, because he was ordained, and that even that was a merit to the father. There's a story that Rabbi Akiva, a version that Rabbi Akiva taught him how to chant the Haftorah in the synagogue. So there are certain customs that come out, not customs, but practices in Jewish law that come out based on this story. That's a little background into some of what's written about the power of saying Kaddish. As we know, a person can only be committed, let's say, or condemned sentenced to time in Gehenna, in purgatory, for a maximum of 12 months. And since that's only for the worst people, and we don't ever assume that our loved ones are the worst. You never want to judge everybody favorably. So therefore, the custom is that after a parent passes away, the children say Kaddish for 11 months. 11 months, not the maximum 12. In fact, it's disrespectful to say it even another day on top of the 11 months. But there's another thing, which is it's not just that, because this all sounds a little dark, and but the truth is that we also say Kaddish on yard sites, right? Why do you say Kaddish on a yard site? If you've done the 11 months, the parents, they moved up, they're in heaven, they're in a good, what's the reason for saying Kaddish? Because Kaddish, just as we mentioned, that the Kaddish has this ability to elevate the worlds, right, and to transition and bring things up from one level to the next, Kaddish also serves to elevate the soul. So when a loved one says Kaddish in memory of somebody else, that soul is elevated in heaven. So it doesn't have to do specifically with purgatory and with punishment and retribution and being easier on the soul. There's that process as well, but it's also serves to elevate the soul. Now, tomorrow, I guess we'll continue this thought a little bit. Let's